All right, welcome to TV47 Breakfast Show, topical discussion this morning. And it is indeed a chaotic world. Nobody is immune, nobody is exempt. And this is the reason why it is a time to fully step into caring, connection, community concern, come together and fully embrace collaboration. These are not my words, these are the words of George Ngugi, who is a leadership development practitioner, a speaker, coach, and trainer. Now, the truth is we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And if you pay attention to those words, they give you an acronym called VUCA. How exactly do we navigate these situations that are volatile, that are ambiguous, and especially now that we are dealing with the coronavirus pandemic? George reminds me that before the coronavirus pandemic, we had the economy, we had locusts, and we had other issues that were also volatile and that required people to know how to navigate. And it is possible that after the coronavirus pandemic, we will have another situation. So how exactly do we navigate? George Ngugi, karibu sana. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Corazon, for having me on.
All right.
Yes.
It's a difficult and complex time, clearly. How are you coping personally?
You know, like they say, one day at a time. There's even a song or a number of songs that go like that. One day at a time.
Right. One day at a time. Sweet Jesus.
There you go. There you go. I can see you went to the Sunday school.
I was in the choir, by the way. Now, this is a new word, but it sounds familiar because the vocabulary here is actually a full description of what's going on. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, VUCA. What entirely is this about?
So VUCA is really about the ever-changing, ever-shifting, I can call it a tide of things. In other words, what happens is that especially in this particular decade, which has begun on quite an interesting note, and the 21st century in general, the rate of change is so fast and rapid. If you go through history and talk about the industrial evolution, talk about the when we had the agrarian, then industrial, and then now we went into the information age. And now we're in what I'd call, obviously, in many ways, the VUCA world, the VUCA ages, because, I mean, in the last 10, 15 years, let me put it that way, the amount of change and transformation that has happened, especially because of the technological advancement, because of the different, should I say, generations of internet connectivity, especially, and digital transformation of many of the operations we have, you find that we have evolved so rapidly. And with that sort of evolution, almost every industry and every sector has gone through leaps and bounds. In fact, I was having a conversation with one of the leaders we worked with recently, and I was just saying how this pandemic is going to possibly cause us to leapfrog. We may probably go 2 to 3 years ahead in terms of technology, because we've had to get into video conferencing, we've had to get into into Zoom and Skype and all these other different virtual meeting platforms. So the principle I'm trying to say is that with the rapid rate of change, if you look at the change that has happened in the last 5, 10, 15 years, it's probably more than the change that happened across the last century, 20th century. And with that, we have whole disciplines and whole careers and whole jobs disappearing. There are certain roles that have completely disappeared or are almost not relevant, and we have new emerging disciplines, new emerging careers and opportunities. And so with that rapid rate of change, a lot also has changed, like I said, across the sectors, whether it's in governance, whether it's in government and government policy, whether it's local politics and geopolitics, whether it's in finance, whether it's in the world of innovation and manufacturing and technology, service industry, name it. And that will continue because it's very quick to connect right now.
Right.
And so that rate of change will be very rapid. But with that rate of change also comes high risk and also high vulnerability to certain shocks.
Before we talk about the risks and the vulnerabilities that come with it, volatile here and what you have described simply means there isn't a point in time that people are going to feel settled enough or established enough, because change will always come and as rapidly as possible. Is there anything that anyone can do to psychologically prepare for the volatility that comes with these times and days?
Well, the first thing you can do is just, first of all, expect it. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So even as this year began, and of course nobody knew, and there are all sorts of jokes on social media how there was a countdown to 2020, then literally all, the Pandora's box literally just opened with all kinds of things
and people want to go back to 2020 because this one, we want to reinstall it. This one has a virus.
Has a virus,
Right.
So you can't, what I'm here to talk about largely is the fact that you can't entirely control the rapid rate of change and the shocks and risks that come. And I like to speak of an analogy of a captain who navigates a ship, a vessel or a plane. When you look at certain routes especially, and I know there's not much air travel going on right now, but there are certain routes which are quite famous for turbulence, like I think going down south to Cape Town, or some of the routes to Dubai and a few other routes. And if you've been in a plane where there's turbulence, it's probably one of the most unsettling experiences ever. And so what we're looking at is a captain of a ship who has to fly or that vessel through very turbulent and stormy conditions. Now, as a captain, you don't actually have control over the external factors. But what your role is as a captain is to navigate your vessel through this very difficult and possibly challenging environment and safely get to your destination. And that's what our esteemed captains, and I know they're not, some of them may be watching right now, do almost every day when business is running as usual. And honestly, there are times you've been on a flight, and as you're getting off, and you see people saying, "Thank you very much, Captain. Thank you, Asante Sana." People had moments where they were holding their hat, and we had awkward moments of silence when you had difficult times in the flight.
George, even for these captains,
yes.
especially in this time,
yes.
This is a situation. The COVID-19 situation is something that was not expected.
It's unprecedented.
It was unprecedented, and nobody entirely, even the scientists, have their feet on the ground with it. People are fumbling to find a vaccine. They're fumbling to find what works, what really doesn't work. We have people who are owners of companies, CEOs, who have to handle this situation, and they have to get it right. And you're talking about navigating. In these situations, such as this, is there a definite way to navigate? How much fumbling is the right way to fumble?
All right, that's a very good question. Thanks for that, Corazon. So as we speak of that captain analogy, the captain is armed with all the controls. He has the controls which he's fully trained and capable of using. He has his crew, that is his first officer. In the bigger, older planes, even used to have an engineer. And of course, there are different people who he work with, including the in-flight or the cabin crew. Similarly, as a leader, because this conversation is about leadership, as a leader in an organization, as a leader in a community of people, and that's what we are looking at, and you can see people are really looking at our leaders locally and even across the globe. Whenever there's a briefing by a governor in the US, a briefing by the president, a briefing here by the CS for health, and the different CSs by our head of state, people are waiting to hear. Why? Because when VUCA goes high, and we're in a high VUCA situation, leadership as well needs to also rise up to match the challenge. And so for the captains who continuously, and I salute you because on most of the flights I've been on, and thank God for that, touch wood, I mean, they have done a really great job. Similarly, our captains of the industry, our leaders in society need to be able to step up and raise what I like to call the consciousness and even the complexity, because we're going through a very complex situation. So of course the run up to this current situation, tidying or rather weathering this storm, and even post, as we get out of this, we need to have raised our, of course, preparedness. We need to have raised also our, let me just say, even our put in place measures and mechanisms for the future. But I don't want to speak onto the many different facets. It's a very multifaceted problem. Mm-hmm. There's the science behind it. There's the fiscal, with policy about finance. There's of course the socio-economic factors. The one area I want to focus on, because that's the area we are into, is the area of people. Because leadership is for people.
Right. When
you go into management and you speak about management, many managers will say about how obviously a manager is supposed to manage resources, and they will list the key resources. They'll talk about machinery, talk about capital, talk about whether it's organization, brand, marketing, all those key things. But unfortunately, quite often, leaders and managers have people at the bottom of the list.
Right, and yet people are the most important thing. Well, before we proceed, let's just get our viewers' comments. You're watching TV47 Breakfast, and we're talking about leading in uncertain times. These are uncertain times indeed. And how exactly is a leader supposed to navigate through these volatile and complex times? We're also talking about the situation of rent, because the question is, should people still be paying rent? And if we are not to pay rent, then what do we expect the landlords to do? Jagedo says on Facebook, well, if you have left your tenants to live in for free, that's great. Just pay your mortgages. That's it. Juma Brenda says association yao bado ina consult. We are still waiting. Landlords should obey social distance from our doors. Like, really? Well, that's a light note to it. But as a leader this morning, what questions do you have? This unprecedented situation, this is a new situation for everyone. What is a question you have towards handling your employees, towards handling the people that you're leading in these uncertain times? We have a leadership coach, George, in the studio. George, you're talking about people being at the epicenter of the entire leadership question. And even as you take on that, at this point, you as a leader, or anyone as a leader who's watching, has to lead people who are anxious. And then there is the issue of, well, the finances, and people who are unsure and very insecure with themselves, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. Is there a particular manual, quote unquote, on how any leader would go about this?
I love that question, and thanks so much for taking us that direction. And
right.
What I've been thinking about, and even just reflecting on the last few days, is about our hierarchy of needs. You know, Maslow did a nice triangle. I'm sure you've seen it, about the hierarchy of needs for human beings. And why I'm bringing that up is because at the heart of people and working with people is helping, for instance, in an organization, in a community of people, in a society, right up to the nation, on a national level. How it's possible to lead people is by giving them that confidence that their core needs are being met. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Maslow's needs hierarchy, you'll see that, of course, at the very basic, and why I'm talking about this, because with the kind of situation we're having globally, we're going back to our very basic needs. Mm-hmm. And of course, at the very basic is the physiological needs. That is, of course, food and water and all that people need to survive. Then, of course, beyond that is safety and security. And then we come into belonging, a sense of belonging, and of course, esteem and self-actualization. So you notice at this point, and not just but at this point more than ever, that people need to believe their needs are being factored in and their needs are being met. In fact, in a contractual engagement, you will realize that whether it's between an employee and employer, between two parties, each of them have a need. Either one person is offering a service, the other person is offering money for the service, and vice versa. The same thing in employment contracts. So people will need to relook and reevaluate. As a leader, you need to be able to look at your people and see, are their needs? What are their core needs in this season? And probably the very first could even be safety and security. People are concerned about, and when you engage the audience, you're seeing the conversations going around landlords, about the rent, about reliefs. People are concerned about what's going to happen because business has not been running as usual. So if you come into the organizational setting, as we navigate this crisis, it's very important for leaders to be able to see how they can be able to speak into those major concerns that their members of staff are preoccupying their minds. How are we going to be able to go through this season? Are we still a team, or is it now everyone for himself and God for us all? So it's very important for a leader to come out very strongly and communicate that first of all, we are in this together, and we're not just going to let you bear the brunt of this. And this is a very, very, very difficult conversation to have, but it's a necessary conversation to have as a leader with your team, from the level just at the top right down to every other person in the organization, in the way it would be most fit for your organization.
George, is it the time right now then to expect calls and text messages from leaders, because people are probably at home? Is it the time now they should connect more as human to human with the people who are under their leadership?
That's absolutely true, but you also have to realize the relationship between these leaders and owners of businesses and organization and the people in the organization is very clear. it's a contractual engagement. And this is an organization of people who are put together to accomplish a certain task. And the reality of the matter is, when this, not if, because it will end, when it's over, we do have to get back to business as usual. We have an organization, we have businesses to sort of pick up and, you know, drive forward. And so it's a conversation needs to be not just about the leaders reaching out to the people who they lead. It needs to be both parties. As people who are led and are part of a team, we need to be able to say, look, we are in this situation. We need to see what can we yield, what can we give to the organization in this very uncertain and difficult time, to be able to ensure that we keep moving. The same breath, the leaders, we need to be able to make the same call. And I want to applaud our leaders, right from the head of state and DP, who actually led from the front, and they took a major step, including taking a pay cut and making very many. I know they've had sleepless nights, and they've made very many tireless initiatives in place to ensure that the people who are led, or they lead in this nation, are cushioned from the shocks. Because the reality of the matter is not a question of if the things are going to be difficult. It's really a question of when. Right. And so as a leader, you need to be able to be proactive. And I know there are leaders who, even before the pandemic, we had cases in Kenya within our borders. They have started to put in place measures and started to have conversations. It's all about conversations around what can we do
to make the situation better.
Yeah, as we go into this, I'll talk about three things which are part of a model which we have, a leadership development model, the leadership circle, which will really come into place in this time. We talk about creative competencies and reactive tendencies. And on another time, we can probably go into detail on it. But there's what we like to talk about achieving and systems awareness.
All right. But yes, before we get into that, I'd like to take a short break. But before we take this break, George, you've mentioned about the kind of leadership that has been offered by the government, and including the president. Yesterday, one of the steps that were taken, by the president was congratulating two individuals, that was Brian and Brenda, who came forward. And Brenda said that she identified herself as somebody who had the symptoms, took herself into isolation, and she got treatment and got well. Many people have questioned this decision and move by the government, saying that it might then make people more careless because they will underrate the situation. Others questioning whether this was genuine or not. Before we go for this break, what do you have to say about how the president and how the government presented this situation?
I completely applaud it. First of all, Brian and Brenda, big up to you. You made my evening yesterday, to be honest, because first of all, with all the, let me call it negative and even messages of gloom and doom, it's good to have a different angle to this whole picture. That you can have a couple of, and they struck me as very young, you know, and they could be a representation of our population, which is very youthful. A lady and a young gentleman come out and say, look, this happened to us, you know. We are Kenyan just like you, we are young just like you, and we were able to get through it, you know, because there is a story of prevention, which is important, but there's also a story of this could happen, and the people who, and we should continue to pray for them and think about them fondly and look forward for those whose families and friends are in that particular bracket, people who are in the quarantine, people who are, you know, could possibly even be under treatment, that they're just like you and me, just like our brothers and sisters.
Do you not think that people are going to look at this situation as just something simple? Because they looked quite healthy. Well, compared to the pictures and videos that we have been seeing from other countries. Are you scared that people might go out once again and say, if Brenda and Brian look like that and it's treatable, then it's nothing to be scared of?
I'll answer that with a question, and the numbers don't lie, or a statement about numbers.
Right.
I don't think that because two people who have recovered, and the numbers are very clear about the recovery numbers, especially in this country, versus the those who you know, have it, and we even have, unfortunately, a death. I don't know what the number is on deaths, but
it's one.
Based on the numbers, it's still one. Based on the numbers, I think if you had a 70% chance of, you know, or 50-50, I don't think you would take, if you had a choice in the matter, you wouldn't take that chance.
Right.
If something would put your life at risk, even 10%, even 5%, you know, you wouldn't necessarily deliberately put yourself in harm's way. Life is beautiful, life is precious, and I know
it would be insane. Na wale watu ambao wanasema kwamba hawa watu ni kama props tu, kwamba they are models, you know.
We do need those models because as the narrative goes the way it is going, we have a flood of negative information. We have to be true about that. And the truth of the matter is, leadership is also a lot about conversations. So by them coming forward and saying, we had this and we were able to beat it, and we went through, and they applauded the medical caregivers who are the unsung heroes in this pandemic, who are very human, who put their, they did not even stigmatize them, the people who are taking care of them, taking care of their room where they were staying. They treated them in a very human way, and did not even, almost selfless, that they not see them as a threat to their own lives,
Right.
And so it's important for us to also have a conversation about those unsung heroes, the caregivers, the officials in the government and the different offices who are really working tirelessly around the clock to ensure those who unfortunately are infected, can be able to get the treatment and care they need and come out of it healthy and well.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, George Kure. We're going to take a short break, but I can see you here, Pakozo Olelibian. Unasema, I thank God for guiding my family, and also thank my wife, Lynn Karimi, and our lovely daughter, Tamika, watching from Meru. Shukrani sana, Pakozo. Young Tiger FC, unasema, ya kwamba serikali itazame vizi hivyo, hiyo bodaboda ingeachwa tu kama kwetu Bongo. Haya basi, shukrani sana. Aizo Aaron anasema Brenda's story is cooked. Bado tena mwingine hapo na story ya Brenda na Brian. Mark Marube Mogako anasema Mungu yupo. Kisha Peter Ole Mutange unasema boy child anafinyiliwa sana hata kwa picture size ambayo iko kwa gazeti. Anasema BBI #yo Brenda Brian initiative. Tunapata vizuri. MC Kadida Peter unasema kwamba Kiambuka Ngoya well represented. Nakwambia George, tunapokea mambo hapa, lakini ni vema kwamba kila Mkenya aweze kutoa maoni yake. George, however, is saying that it's a good thing, even if it was a model, to have a different narrative. What do you have to say about the Brenda and Brian while coming out and talking about their situation being turned into a positive situation? Kisha Kathy anasema yeye bado analipa tu kodi ya nyumba, kwamba yeye landlord wake hajamwambia kwamba asilipe. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'd like to take a short break, but we're coming back with still the conversation on leading in these uncertain times. Don't go too far.
The skills you develop and the drive you develop is what matters. Because if you get your opportunity, no one will give you the next level. You have to fight for it.
Young people who are in the education system, they are the very lucky people because you have a card that can speak for you. I am a student. Can I do this? I am a student. Can I do this? You have a card that can speak for you.
We're the ones who are going to live through this country for the next 50 years. And it's something that needs to be fixed today. And so I think the ones who should be championing in terms of having a better country and pushing for equality is young people.
The parents probably went to school in 1980, 1962. During those times you had a degree, you are a provincial administrator. Immediately.
Yes.
Right now, I cannot imagine how many mathematicians graduated last year December. I cannot imagine.
And so we need to realize that the situation is dire. And sometimes even our office WhatsApp group, we get DMs of people crying because they are jobless. And it's depressing to the point where they're telling you they are going to commit suicide.
We would not be having this conversation if 20 years ago the nation had this conversation about what work would look like.
On this particular program, the hashtag to use as always is #YouthConnect, and my name as always is Eugene Adnangwe. Josephine Uko is actually helping us to interpret this through sign language.
Mengi amesemwa kuhusu jinsi virusi hivi vya corona vinavyosambaa na kuzuiliwa. Hata hivyo, sio yote unayasikia ni ukweli. Uongo mwafanya watu wengi kuishi kwa woga kote ulimwenguni. Nimekutana na watoto wengi wakisema kuwa mbu, yani mosquito, husaidia kusambaza virusi hivi. Huo si ukweli. COVID-19 husambazwa na hewa. na hii hufanyika wakati mtu aliyepata virusi hivi hukohoa na chembechembe za mate usafiri hadi kwa mtu mwingine. Ni aina fulani ya mbu ndio huleta ugonjwa wa malaria. Ni ukweli kwamba ukipata chanjo ya pneumonia itakuzuia kupata virusi hivi? La hasha, hivi virusi ni vipya. Wataalamu na madaktari wanajizatiti vilivyo kuvumbua chanjo mpya ili kukabiliana na virusi hivi. Njia ambayo ni mwafaka na rahisi kupunguza kuenea kwa ugonjwa huu wa corona au COVID-19 ni kunawa mikono yako kwa kutumia sabuni na kujiepusha na vikundi au umati. Kumbuka kuwa mimi na wewe tunaweza kufanya mabadiliko makubwa.
With every new week comes new adventures, fresh expectations, and new stories to tell. Where others tell you stories as a youth, we will invite you to the table to critically debate.
We will continuously recycle the same kind of leaders and the same kind of bad leaders that we end up complaining about later if we do not adopt a value and issue-based political system in this country.
Well, of course, here on New Week, we're all about matters youth has...
Analyze developing stories and how they are likely to shape up in the new week.
I think youths in Kenya need to find themselves what they're good at.
Where are we in that trajectory as the youth right now? Are we starting where we are?
It's more than just a current affairs program.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching TV47 Breakfast. The hashtag is already on and it's been on since 6 a.m. It's hashtag TV47 Breakfast on Twitter and on Facebook. At TV47KE on Twitter and on Facebook. 22047 is our SMS line. We are with George Ngugi in the studio, who's a leadership development practitioner, and as well as a speaker, coach, and a trainer, talking about leading in these uncertain times. Go on and bring in or key in your questions. Should you be a leader who has questions and frustrations in these uncertain times? All right, George, there's something else we were talking about during the break, even as you break down the model that you are currently using, that there are businesses that are actually thriving in these uncertain times.
Absolutely,
right.
That's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, in the work we do in leadership development and coaching, we have a model which is called the Leadership Circle, which is one of the leading leadership development models in the world, and we are certified for that. And what we do in that model is that we help leaders get to a higher level of self-awareness. We help leaders be able to know on the different aspects. There are about 18 competencies of a leader which you can measure and how they're doing each of them. And right now I just want to focus on two major parts of the creative competencies, which is what we like to call systems awareness and achieving. And achieving, as the name suggests, really is about, do you have a strategic focus? Do you achieve results? Are you decisive? Are you purposeful and visionary? That's very important, especially in a time like this, because what happens is when we have a crisis such as this, what happens is that the strategy that we had put in place in January, I know many leaders went out for strategy sessions in January or late last year, it goes out of the window. You're like, let's just get back into survival mode. Remember when I talked about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you come out of achieving and self-actualization and esteem, and you come right down to maybe safety and security. As a leader, you don't have that luxury because the buck stops with you. And granted, we have a very difficult situation, but you're still required to be decisive. You're still required to be able to be purposeful and visionary. And even in the challenging times that we have, you need to be able to bring out, even if it means, we want to call it the revised amended vision based on the prevailing conditions, but you still need to be seen as the captain of a ship. And just like I said, we had
George, sorry to cut you short. This amended vision, would this be the one that leads to reinventing in situations that need you or require you to reinvent yourself, reinvent the business?
Precisely. Like when we talk of the captain of a ship, there are times that you actually have to change the route a little bit. So maybe the route was, you talk about coordinates, and those who are into navigation know about coordinates and the route and whatnot. And I remember we had the initial flight to the US, direct flight, KQ direct flight. I remember just watching the captains talk about how when they come back, they use a slightly different route, and people were making fun. Is it like it's shorter coming back? It's because it's mteremko, quote unquote. But the point is, it's not cast in stone. That the route may be along a certain path, but for along the way you may meet some challenges and obstacles. That's what we're going through today. 2020 is not going to be uninstalled because of the virus. 2020 will still happen and will be on our history books.
Just to give an example that would relate to individuals, we are having, almost all hotel industry, the whole hotel industry is on a slump down. All hotels are closed. If we have chefs, is this a moment now they can actually cook at home and do deliveries, something like that?
Precisely, you hit the nail on the head. So when you talk of reinvention, the reality is that because we are in a crisis, certain traditional models, and that's what VUCA is, the disruption. Traditional models of doing work have been disrupted. The hospitality industry, the service delivery industry, there's so many industries that require human interaction, including transport. In that lies an opportunity to be able to now start to step in and give a service a completely different way. I want to speak about, for instance, the public service vehicles or the motorbike operators. You find that right now there's a huge need for delivery services, and I bet if some are able to invent and become go into the bracket of essential services, including supplying of food and drugs and other things, you may find, despite even the regulations on movement, they may get into the category of essential services, and the limitations that they are now facing may be able to be surmounted, and beyond surmounted, they may be able to get an extraordinary new stream of income and of achievement. Right. So the point is, as a leader, just like the captain of a ship, navigate. See what path, what course can you take that can probably now give you different outcomes, because your destination as a leader, where you're taking your team, where you're taking your organization, where you're taking your community and nation, has to be the same. How you get there may change, but you must get on track with that.
All right, you were talking about the models, and again...
So that's part of the model that's on achieving. Now, the other part I want to focus on is systems awareness. At a time like this, we will need to really, really focus on systems awareness. And there are three aspects of systems awareness I want to talk about. We have community concern, which is very, very important. As a leader, you need to be seen to be very concerned about the community which you lead. Why I say that is because sometimes leaders are seen to be more concerned with the bottom line. How is our P&L looking, Are we in profit? Are we hitting losses? Can we cut costs, etc., etc., which is important, especially for a leader to keep the organization afloat. But you also need to be seen to be meeting with the people and the stakeholders, especially the people you lead, at their very basic need level. What gaps do you need to bridge? Are people having trouble with public transport? People having trouble coming in? Can you have staff rotation? Can you have all these initiatives in place, including even a provision of counseling, where necessary, or some sort of support just to help people get through this difficult time.
Right.
So it needs to be seen where you're meeting the community, not just the community, the internal community, because you also have clients. And I've seen, and I'd like to applaud many of some of the organizations I've seen out there offering services, including some which we partner with, which are now giving, including Longhorn, who are giving free access to their e-learning portal for one. We have even some of the organizations giving medical care, allowing people to get some checkups free, right. and such initiatives. The church has also stepped up very strongly and are giving some support to the vulnerable, including giving food rations and whatnot, right. and religious organizations. So it's important to be seen to connect with the community in this most difficult time, and the barriers that exist in terms of social gaps and social barriers, to start to break them down a little bit, and therefore your leadership becomes far much more effective,
right? And it comes closer to the heart and the needs of these people, right? We have 3 minutes to go. Just pitch on exactly what you do, and also you told me that VUCA is not a new initiative, that it began in the time of when soldiers needed it back then.
Correct. So VUCA, right. Of course, the origins of VUCA are originally in the military, where it was used as a term for strategy and just helping people come out. Then in the 90s, it was co-opted by a number of Harvard scholars. But now in more recent times, it has become quite a common business term, and even part of our language, where we talk about the VUCA, we're going through VUCA, and this is a high VUCA situation. And so in VUCA, what you need to do as an individual, as a team, as an organization, you need to be able to continue to be agile, continue to reinvent yourself. And so what we do is we help leaders, we help organizations, we help teams be able to be more agile and to navigate the unexpected and unprecedented challenges. And how we do that is by helping them raise their self-awareness, helping them raise their leadership effectiveness. We have a number of very, very practical tools and models which we use to enable the individuals and the teams and leaders to be able to reflect on their level of leadership, where they're doing well, areas of growth, and therefore be able to apply themselves in a more authentic and effective way.
Right. Where do we find you?
For more information about what we do, you can check our website, which is delftraining.com. And of course, you can reach us on social media on Delf Training, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And we'd love to connect with you and see how you can be able to help you as an individual, as a team, as an organization, be able to navigate this very difficult challenge and those that will come in the days to come.
All right. Yes. Thank you very much. That is George Ngugi, who is a leadership development practitioner, speaker, coach, and trainer. And we were talking about navigating in a VUCA world. VUCA meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Shukrani sana George. Lakini George, tukimalizia kabisa. Unadhani kwamba landlords wanafaa wasitishe mambo ya kuchukua kodi?
What I'm going to say about that, and not just landlords, but for everyone.
Right.
I talked about 1C, which was community concern, or 2 Cs. I'm going to talk about conversations and collaboration. Whatever it is, whether it's a service provider, because even organizations are looking at cost cutting, whether it's that landlord, and people have landlords at their offices and at their homes, etc., whether it's internet service providers, and I've seen they're doing it very well, whether it's digital content providers. Let's have conversations. You're better off when you have a conversation, and you're better off when you call them before they call you. So pick up the phone, do an email, tell them, hey, this is what's going on, and they're well aware of it. It's a global pandemic, you know.
Right.
And then see how you can be able to collaborate and meet halfway.
Right.
There has to be a win-win. What can you do for them to feel that you're for them as well? And what can they do? So remember I talked about community concern. And then in conversations, and finally in collaboration, shall we be able to navigate and tide this storm together.
We meet together.
Yes.
All right. Bernard Asanyo Derewa Punda anasema salimia yeye na wapata poa nikiwa maeneo kwa Ruben. Hata sisi tumekupata vema sana. Shukrani kwa kusalia nasi. Naftali Mwangi anasema well teamed at Kajiado Isinya. Wake up our family at Nyeri Gakungu. Nimepata vizuri sana familia yake Ruben basi iweze kuamka kwa sababu sasa hivi ni saa 1:40. It's quite well, not early anymore. But thank you very much for choosing TV47 Breakfast. The hashtag is still TV47 Breakfast on Twitter and on Facebook. The conversation on the street that has people scratching their heads is Brenda and Brian. If we believe this story or not, George in the studio has said, whatever the circumstance, model or not, it is indeed good to have a different picture that is not entirely negative. Is this what you have to say? Kathy, I also found Kathy Uching, I found your message. Unasema wewe kama landlord bado unalipisha watu kodi, lakini George ana suggest why not have a conversation and a collaboration, because this is a difficult time for everyone. Don't go too far. We will be back taking a peek again into what's going on in our country, in other places, as we come to the very tail end of the TV47 Breakfast Show. My name once again is Corazon Safan.